The training camp preview continues. How will these players affect training camp and the season as a whole? We'll get to the bottom of it. Presented by my friends at Platinum AC and Heating. Dwayne's the best in the business. I needed a brand new air conditioner. That's who I went to. You can trust him. From repairs to replacements to just simple preventative maintenance, Platinum AC and Heating has you covered. The wheel decides who we are talking about. The pre-training camp preview selector wheel will determine the players we discuss in this one, and we get started with a potentially important piece to this offensive line in Tytus Howard. Now, Tytus Howard is still on this Houston Texans team. There was almost no chance the Texans were moving on from Tytus Howard this past offseason. The contract that Nick Caserio gave him a couple of years ago made it almost impossible to get rid of Tytus Howard, in addition to all the other things that the Texans needed to adjust and change along not only the offensive line, but the totality of the team. It just would have been cost prohibitive to get rid of Tytus Howard. He's still on this team, and now he's playing yet again another different role for the Houston Texans. In minicamp and OTAs, we saw Tytus Howard at right guard a bunch in the offensive line configuration. Now, could Howard still end up as a tackle or the left guard? Certainly. They're going to mix and match along the offensive line until exactly the right five guys in the right five spots are there to protect CJ Stroud. Does Tytus Howard fit into that? Well, that's just really up to Tytus Howard. And I understand he's playing yet again a different position, so that's a little bit of a challenge for Howard. But the organization, the team, told us how they felt about Tytus Howard with the way that they operated this offseason. By virtue of going through this offseason and finding themselves a tackle in the draft, a starting left tackle or potentially starting left tackle in free agency, and Blake Fisher being on this team, Tytus Howard's not a part of the tackle conversation. They went out and signed a veteran who's only played left guard in his career. And Laken Tomlinson played a lot of left guard in minicamp and OTA. So Tytus Howard in a new position yet again. He's played right tackle, and left guard at the NFL level. So now a new one at right guard. You love to hear from Howard, hey, he knows what position he's headed towards. He knows what he's going to go out there and do to get ready from a physical standpoint. He's really putting his time and effort into that. And look, he probably should, because if he doesn't win this job at right guard for the Houston Texans, he's probably not going to be a member of the Houston Texans after this season. And they might even decide to just go ahead and eat the cash at the end of training camp if he can't go out there and win this job. Look, he's got some pretty stiff competition. Jalen Thomas, Ed Ingram, and a couple of other players, Juice Scruggs potentially, Jarrett Patterson potentially as well at that guard spot, even Eli Cox, the undrafted free agent rookie. He's going to have to fend off a few suitors, but he's going to have a crack at finding himself a starting job on this offensive line. He'll be a part of the competition in training camp. He'll also be a part of the competition that continues throughout the regular season, because just because he could potentially win the job doesn't mean he's going to keep the job. He's going to have to go out there and play well to keep that job. Do I believe Howard can do it? Probably don't believe in him. Is it possible that he could lock down a guard spot and play a close to average or average brand of football for the Houston Texans? Yes, it's certainly possible. Do you feel great counting on Tytus Howard to do that? You probably don't, but you don't feel great about any of these offensive linemen for the Houston Texans. So that's not necessarily a knock for Tytus Howard. It's a knock on the group as a whole until they prove something. Tytus Howard created a lot of doubt when he was paid highly as a right tackle. He has not been able to pay that off. Perhaps this new experience, this new approach, he can pay off for the Houston Texans at a new position. Oh, by the way, I suppose there's a chance he ends up at tackle. He played a little bit of tackle in minicamp OTAs. It didn't go well for him. Will Anderson hit him with one of Will Anderson's new moves. And let's just see if he can just figure out guard. Okay, just figure out guard. Focus on that. He knows he's going to be a guard. Maybe he comes into camp with a higher floor and even a higher ceiling than we have seen from Tytus Howard the past couple of years. The wheel spins and tells us our next member of the Houston Texans. We're going to talk about Henry To'o, the linebacker, going into his third season with the Houston Texans. And To'o did an excellent job last year. His rookie year, it was fine. Okay, it was what you kind of expected. He was supposed to be a heady player that maybe lacked a little bit of the premier athleticism necessary to be a big-time impact player for the Houston Texans. And then his second season in the NFL, he trimmed up his body. He told my colleague Landry Locker that he went out there, focused heavily on getting in better shape, being ready to handle a season of NFL football. And then with Christian Harris's injury, he was called upon early and often for this Houston Texans team. And To'o did a pretty solid job. Better play recognition, better tackling. He was just a much better player from year one to year two. And now you like to hope that yet another year in that defense for the Houston Texans, perhaps another year of an NFL offseason, making him an even better physical player and mental player between the ears, that you can count on Henry To'o in your linebacker room. And look, if Christian Harris isn't ready, standing next to Azeez Al-Shaair will be Henry To'o at the linebacker spot. And if Christian Harris is healthy, well, you've got a couple of different ways you can employ Henry To'o. 3 linebacker sets. If Harris plays over him, that's a trusty, sturdy, reliable backup that you have that you can go to. Maybe you feel better about him in certain sets versus putting Christian Harris on the field in this situation or that situation. There's a lot to like about Henry To'o as a piece to this Texans defense. Is he ever going to be a star? Is he ever going to be a standout player? No, but if he can continue to be a reliable player, then you're going to feel pretty good about having Henry To'o on the team. And for a player to make the jump that he did from year one to year two, you always get excited about that year 2 to year 3 jump. You've heard D'Amico Ryans talk about it a bunch of times. He really feels like that jump from 2 to 3 is when you start to kind of understand things and you really feel like you start to get your feet wet and understand what you're doing at the NFL level. And that's hopefully going to be what Henry To'o experiences this year. Solid player from a rotational and a piece standpoint. Really solid player if he ends up as a backup. That means somebody much better has pushed him down the depth chart. Who's next? What's the wheel got for us here? Okay, how about this one? Jaylen Reed, a rookie. You want to talk about a depth chart situation? Jaylen Reed, man, that is a fun player. Reed out of Penn State, a rookie, mid to late round draft pick, depending on how you want to classify it or say it, for the Houston Texans, 5th rounder for the Texans. Now I'm making sure I got my math right here. 5th rounder. Yes, because he wasn't a 6th rounder. No, they didn't have a 5th rounder. They trade up for him. Now you got me second guessing myself, and I'm double checking all my work as I talk about it. I was wrong. 6th rounder. They didn't have a 5th rounder. They used the 5th rounder to move up for Jalen Smith, but they used the 6th rounder on Jaylen Reed. Now that we've got that settled, Jaylen Reed, 6th rounder, Penn State. I'll have this committed to memory sometime soon. I like Reed. He's a heat-seeking missile out there. He can do a lot of physical stuff at the safety position. And some of the issues, some of the things that popped up that maybe led to him being a late round draft pick for the Houston Texans are things that you would hope watching some premier NFL talent and learning from them could get coached out of him. Some of the angles, some of the pursuit, some of the anticipation. Hey, you watch C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was one of the NFL's better safeties last year. You watch him do it, and maybe you pick up a thing or two. You watch Kalen Bullock, who was one of the best rookie safeties in all of football last year. Maybe you pick up a thing or two. I know that right away they can go out there and put Reed on special teams, and he can be a special teams weapon for special teams coordinator Frank Ross. I know that he's going to have to fine-tune some things about his game, and I would go far away from saying he's guaranteed to be on the roster, but he certainly feels like the type of player that could be, steal's not the right word, but a pleasant surprise as a late-round pick. The Texans have some names that they can turn to at the safety position, but it'd be nice if by the middle of the season, end of the season, they wanted to turn to Reed in situations where they needed him to be on the field instead of one of the safeties or in addition to one of the safeties, and just having a little bit more confidence in a player towards the middle back end of the year should you need to tap into the depth. I liked him a lot as a draft prospect. In fact, if they had switched Jalen Smith and Jaylen Reed, where those two players were drafted, I probably would have liked both the draft picks even more. I like to read a lot, reading about him, learning about him in the offseason, in the scouting process, talking to him at the NFL Scouting Combine. And I like him as a depth piece for this Houston Texans team. I like my guys at Platinum AC and Heating for you if you have any air conditioning problems. Mine went out earlier this summer. It was awful. I called Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating, and he got it taken care of for me. He had to rent a crane to put the new top part of the unit on top of my building. And then his guys, man, they were incredible and so speedy in getting things done on the inside, connecting it to the top. And they were done like that. The only thing that slowed them down was weather. And even then, after it rained, they worked right through it. That great service is available to you. From repairs, if you can fix it, Dwayne will fix it. To replacements, he'll get you the best price in town. To just simple preventative maintenance to make sure it's running the way that it needs to be running. Dwayne's the best in the business. Call him today for any of your AC needs. If you need an AC guy, you need the AC guy, and that's Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating. Speaking of this player is the next player in our list. Ooh, Jarrett Patterson. This is a fun name for the Houston Texans, and thinking about what Jarrett Patterson could be for the Texans, and ultimately, maybe not the ideal, but a solid situation for Jarrett Patterson. Look, best case scenario for Jarrett Patterson, he's the starting center for the Houston Texans. That's possible. That is a potential outcome for Jarrett Patterson. Is it the likely outcome? Right now, I'd tell you no, but Patterson has some NFL experience. He's played a good amount of center. In fact, when you look at the options to play center on this roster, he's played far more snaps than all of them. He's played more center than Juice Scruggs. He's played more center than Jackson Andrews. And he's played more center than obviously undrafted free agent Eli Cox, who's played 0 snaps at center at the NFL level. Jake Andrews. I always confuse Jake Andrews with James Andrews, who's the elbow doctor. Jackson Andrews. Where the hell did that come from? Jake Andrews. Patterson's played more than him. So Jarrett Patterson, best case scenario, he's the starting center for the team. Worst case scenario, he's off the team and he's on another team. And he's a backup center or a depth piece for them. I think the actual likelihood for Patterson falls somewhere in between. Look, the Texans felt decent enough about him to insert him at guard last year when Kenyon Green wasn't playing well, and then a concussion eliminated that option for them. When Patterson was back, they put him at center, and he helped kind of shore up some of the pass blocking, but I don't know if the run blocking was totally there for Patterson. But he's got to continue to get that body right. He's got to stay healthy. He's had injuries affect both of his seasons so far in the National Football League. If healthy, drawing on a little bit of experience, and obviously it's a new system for him with Nick Caley's offense coming in. Drawing from his experience, if healthy, he has a chance to start for this team at perhaps center. And if not center, maybe he starts for them at right guard. Or maybe he's an option at left guard. There's plenty of things you can do with Jarrett Patterson, and that's what makes his ultimate landing spot somewhere between off the team and the starting center, because he can play a variety of different positions along the offensive line, and obviously he can be a backup center. That type of player is inherently quite valuable on game day when you can only bring a certain number of players to the active roster. So with Patterson being potentially the backup to a couple of positions, or even starting at center, he's got a good, solid opportunity to make this team. Now, he's going to be in a tight competition, a battle throughout the course of training camp for whatever spot he lines up at. If he's at center or guard, he's going to be in a battle with somebody who wants to land ahead of him on the depth chart. But I could see a scenario where he finds himself as the starting center. And that would mean that he's outplayed a bunch of other guys and he's earned that spot. Remember, last year in training camp, it was just those 5 guys that were the first team and they were the guys, and there was no real competition or fight about it. There's going to be a fight this year. If Jarrett Patterson wants to be the center, well, he's going to have to win that fight with Jake Andrews, not Jackson, with Eli Cox, with Juice Scruggs, and anybody else that might want to take their hand and snap the ball to C.J. Stroud and Davis Mills and Keaton Slovis and maybe Graham Mertz. So I would say my prediction now for Patterson, on the roster, not the starting center, but I'd be fine if I was wrong with that. Who's next? As Bill Goldberg would say back in the WCW days. D'Angelo Ross, the cornerback who's been around this team for a few years. Look, every time I talk about D'Angelo Ross in the past, 9 months or so, I talk about the time that he filled in for Kamari Lassiter against the Green Bay Packers last year. And when Jordan Love targeted D'Angelo Ross, he had a perfect passer rating when targeting D'Angelo Ross. That was not a good day for D'Angelo Ross. He was in the vicinity, but he did not affect the play to the level where it affected Jordan Love really at all. And that's not what D'Angelo Ross is. He's not really a true backup outside cornerback for this team. What is he, though? He is a really good special teams player. He's a player that Frank Ross can trust. We obviously saw the big 2-point conversion returned for a score last year. This is a guy with special team snaps under his belt, experience, and in a pinch, if you had to play him at cornerback, you could play him at cornerback. I wouldn't advise it, but in a pinch, if you had to, you could play D'Angelo Ross at cornerback. Tough part for D'Angelo Ross, there's other special teams aces that got brought onto this team, like Tremont Smith and Nick Neiman, that are going to make it hard for him to make the team as a special teams ace. And there's competition in the cornerback room. Tremont Smith is also competition in the cornerback room in addition to special teams. Jalen Smith, the rookie third-round pick by the Texans, he's, of course, going to make the team. Damon Arnett is competition. There's a couple of other names that will be vying for not only snaps at cornerback ahead of D'Angelo Ross, but snaps on special teams as well. It won't be easy for D'Angelo Ross, but it's certainly not impossible to see him performing well enough to be in the mix, in the depth chart from the cornerback standpoint, and a guy that Frank Ross, the special teams coordinator, relies on in a special teams manner. Don't want to see him on defense. He is a really solid special teams player that you can count on in the third phase of football. Don't forget, it's Channel Appreciation Week, Houston Football Appreciation Week, so don't forget to check out the link in the description down below to the Google form so you can get entered into the giveaways for the week. Dare Agumbawale, another special teams ace that you don't really want to see on another side of the football. Look, the Houston Texans have praised what Dare Agumbawale does on special teams. I would also hope that they can teach somebody to do what Dare Agumbawale does on special teams. He's just not a player that you can rely on for what you would need a running back to do. There are elements of the running back position that Dare Agumbawale is excellent at handling. He can do some of those third down duties, but you're not ever really going to trust him with a bunch of dump off passes. He got an opportunity to sort of be the number one last year when Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce were hurt. It wasn't very good. And at this point, you'd hope with some other special teams excelling players on the roster, that it's time for Dare Agumbawale to hand over that role to someone younger, more spry, and potentially more useful on the offensive side of the ball than he has been. We talked about Woody Marks in the previous video. If you missed that, that's in the link in the description down below as well. Woody Marks is the player that's going to be fighting, challenging, scratching, and clawing for Dare Agumbawale's third down running back role. Now, obviously, if the veteran is just better at it, handles the pass protection better, and is able to contribute on special teams, he's going to be on the roster. We know Marks is still going to be on the roster, but he'll have to fight Agumbawale continuously to get those snaps and reps. Agumbawale can't take over if Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon are out of commission, so you're at a loss there if that's the guy that you need to put in as the top running back for your organization. But as far as the special teams usefulness, third down usefulness, I could see there's a role where maybe the Texans would be okay with keeping him around, though it would be intriguing to see Woody Marks play well enough to see the Texans maybe move on from Dare Agumbawale. Let's see a couple more names as we continue to go through this training camp preview. Oh, man, I sure do love talking about Cade Stover. Cade Stover was a player that I really hoped the Houston Texans were going to draft in the 2024 NFL draft, and ultimately they did. Now, did some really good players go after Cade Stover in the draft at positions where the Texans probably could have used a player? Yes, Bucky Irving went 5 picks later, 125. Cade Stover went 120. But I digress. I like Cade Stover. And I believe in Cade Stover and his improvement and growth as a tight end after previously playing defense at Ohio State and switching to tight end. It was there in college and then transforming from a college tight end to an NFL tight end is one of the most difficult things to do in all of football. Cornerback and tight end are really tough positions to make the jump from college and go to the pros. And Stover had some issues last year. He was a atrocious pass blocker, according to Pro Football Focus's pass block rating. It was worse than Dalton Schultz last year from a pass blocking standpoint. But Stover had some success as a run blocker. He was one of the best rookie run blockers in all of the tight ends across the NFL last year. And there were some guys last year that were drafted specifically because they're supposed to be good run blockers. Stover was better than almost everybody, and he stood up against almost all the tight ends across football as far as run blocking success. Now pass blocking's got to get better. The run blocking has to get even better. There's something to build on there. And then the receiving has to come along. He has to be a guy that at the very least CJ Stroud can go, nothing's open. Uh-oh, offensive line didn't hold up. Boom, there's Cade. Get a few yards, keep the train on the tracks, stay in the rhythm, and keep things going. Don't take a loss. Don't have an incompletion. Just get it to Cade, 4 yards, live to fight another down. That's initially what you get out of Cade Stover. Now, if he continues to develop and grow as a receiver in the tight end position, then you could find ways to utilize him and get him out there and have a little bit of success from a receiving standpoint. Is he ever going to be an incredible receiver? I'm not sure that's ever going to be the case, but could Cade Stover confidently and consistently carve out tight end 2 and tight end 3 duties on a roster for the next, say, 9 years? Yeah, I do believe he can do that. Now, D'Amico Ryans did praise in minicamp and OTAs Stover's route running and how much he'd seen it improve in a certain element here and there. That'll need to continue to improve in training camp. He's got to be a guy that can be a safety valve, a option in the receiving game. That didn't look like that was the case last year. And if the pass blocking gets better, the run blocking's solid. If you can put him on the field a little bit more and the receiving comes along, you start to see how this is a useful player for the Houston Texans in 2025. Let's talk about that last useful player here for the Houston Texans in 2025. Hey, Foloransu Fatukasi, a.k.a. Foley Fatukasi. Man, the big fella was brought in to help stuff the run last year for the Houston Texans. And in training camp last year, man, he looked like $1 million. Him and Mario Edwards looked like Aaron Donald out there at defensive tackle. Now, unfortunately, we found out that was because the interior of the Texans' offensive line was no good. It stunk. And that's why they looked really good. And Fatukasi had a really up and down season. When he had his highs, like that game against the Chargers in the playoffs, they were really good. When he had his lows, when he was hurt and banged up and they couldn't consistently put him on the field and you couldn't rely on him because he was on the injury report week in, week out, those were really low. And he's in a dogfight for his position at the defensive tackle spot because Mario Edwards is back on this team. Tim Settle is still on this team. They brought back Sheldon Rankins. Tommy Togiai played well down the stretch. Kurt Hinish is here. Junior Tafuna is an undrafted free agent. Keontae Hamilton, talked about him in the last video. He's a factor as well. Won't be easy for the big fella to find his way onto the roster. And I keep thinking about guys have a little bit of an injury history. If this pops up in training camp, he'll get the Noah Brown treatment where maybe you're better than some of the other guys, but you haven't been healthy enough for us to trust you consistently. So we're going to move on. You'll have to find something else to do. But the big fella, he's going to be on the team if he makes the team to help stop the run. There's not a lot of pass rush prowess, but early down Foley Fatukasi, if he can replicate what he did against the Chargers more than a few times in this upcoming season, that's a really solid player. That's a player that you'd be happy to have on your roster in 2025. But he's got a lot of work to do, not only in proving he can replicate that Charger situation, but also be a healthy player in this upcoming season. What do you make of these players we talked about here in the video today? Let me know in the comment section down below on your way down there. Thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out the Google form that I have linked in the description. That's how you enter into all the fantastic giveaways that I'm giving away as a thank you for you this week, from restaurant gift cards to Texans swag to some JJ Watt stuff to some football cards. There's all sorts of fun things that I'm giving away to say thank you to you here in the year of our Lord 2025 for all the support here of Houston football, not only here on the YouTube channel, but also in the newsletter. So thank you. Fill out the form. That's your entry. There's all the rules. Read those. You got to follow the rules or you don't win. Yada, yada, yada. Don't forget to visit Platinum AC and Heating. My guy Dwayne's the best in the business. You need AC help, Dwayne's going to take care of you, and I appreciate you watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. The wheel will keep spinning. The previews will keep coming, and I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.